Hello and welcome back. I hope maybe you got some time to have some lunch or something good for you. I got an excellent lunch, and now it's the last session for today, and I am just checking a few things here. Hang on a second here, just to be sure that everything works, and it seems to work. Henrik is... I will just kick him out. No, I won't do that right now. I need to be gentle to him. Okay, so the next session, or the last session of today, is again, I'm sorry, this is one of a session that I have to present to you. This one is sponsored by Horizon. Horizon has been or is a fantastic support of INKISH, and not just from a money perspective, but also from we become friends. I think we become friends with. I mean, we become friends with everybody, but I think it's a really positive relationship we had with them. It started actually last year at Hunkler Innovation Days, where I interviewed Yoshihiro Oe, who is working for Horizon, and then we were invited to get to Kyoto to participate in the Think Smart Factory, and that was actually a very, very exciting event, and that is what has led me into talking about the issue today, because Horizon, they said we don't have time to participate, but we want to support the project, so they didn't even ask me for a subject, so I just picked IoT. And I will now shift to presentation and see if I can make it work. I hope I can do that. So, and I hope you find it interesting, of course. I think it's a really, really great. Let's see if it works. So, IoT is short for Internet of Things. And I think it's something that you will hear more and more about during the next many years, because IoT, or Internet of Things, is something that a lot of people have been talking about for a quite long time. It is something that needed to be developed based on some updates of some protocols for people that are a little bit into the technical things. The standard of how we get IP addresses was based on a protocol called IPv4, and the new one is called IPv6, which is the reason why we can do this. And one of the reasons why IPv6 was needed before we could have Internet of Things was because Internet of Things basically means that everything from a refrigerator to a washing machine to a mobile phone to a computer to a car can be connected via the internet in these protocols. And in order to do that, every device on Earth need to have a unique IP address. And that is exactly what IPv6 gave, along with a few other things that are really important. So when we talk about Internet of Things, or IoT, there is some basic thing that we need to, I won't say that we need to understand them, but I just want to explain them. There's obviously more than I can tell, but first of all, because of my limited skills, and secondly, because I was trying to talk about things that I find that is maybe the most important thing to know at current time anyway. So, as I said, IPv6 is a protocol for things. The reason for having it is more addresses, IP addresses, and the purpose is to have all things connected. So how do we connect things today? Yeah, I think that everybody knows these 6 brands, at least when you hear the names. The first to the left is the Bluetooth. We use it to connecting our wireless headsets, to connect to our radios at home. We connect the mouses to our computers. We connect a lot of different technologies, and what is very interesting about the Bluetooth technology is that it is a short distance, so you can connect things easily, and then you can move away and disconnect, use it in the car, use it. I mean, you use it a lot of different places. It was originally developed by Ericsson in Sweden, and Bluetooth is from the old Danish king back from 800 century, where he's Harald Bluetooth, and that is it's a rune, which is the letters of the old Vikings for Bluetooth. So that is a little history lesson as well. So Bluetooth is short range communication. Then all of us also know Wi-Fi, where we connect our computers and a lot of other devices to the internet through a router. And I won't say much about that. It's a little bit further distance. It's a high speed. You can have them very fast, and everything is just fantastic with it. And then you have NFC, which is number 3. NFC is the things that are built into mobile phones. So you have like near field communication. So that is when you use your mobile phone as a payment device in a supermarket, you have to be in a very close proximity to the register. Otherwise, it would be abused by somebody else, of course. And that is also when we talk about NFC, that is, for example, Antalis, they made a paper with built-in NFC chips, so you can basically use that to print a business card on it. And then when you give your business card to somebody who has a phone, it can automatically read the data, and then, get that kind of technology. So it's very, very tiny, very, very inexpensive technology that can be used in a lot of different applications. And the last one is it's a network. Basically, it represents the cellular network, like the mobile phones. So we have the 4G, 3G, and upcoming 5G. One of the interesting things about 5G is the speed and a lot of technology that is built into the network, enabling devices to communicate faster. It has a auto system to shift between different service providers, so you always have the fastest possible connectivity, which is of course very important. So these 4 kind of technologies, I'm pretty sure you have heard of or using or know of. But connectivity with Internet of Things is not only the known ones. There are more ways of connecting Internet of Things, and in this in the logos you can see below, I don't know most of them, to be honest, but these are examples of different kind of technologies you use for different purposes. Let's say that you, for example, the set one, the red one, that is, I can't remember the name right now, but it's a service that you typically use if you have like a factory and you need to have your devices connected in a way where you can have different ways of making sure that you have a constant connectivity rather than being depending on Wi-Fi. So it's different protocols, different bandwidth, different kinds of things they support. The thing that everything is coming back to is another buzzword. In Europe, we call it Industry 4.0. It has few different names around the world, but Industry 4.0 is essentially the next step of how we see the industrialized development of our societies. And here are some of the words that are defining Industry 4.0. We have like 3D printing, robots, automation, IoT, as we're talking about today, cloud computing, AI or artificial intelligence, augmented reality, big data, smart sensors, and location detection. If we look at why these are interesting as part of the Industry 4.0, is basically that you can't imagine that you have a robot made today that do not communicate to some extent with the rest of the production facility. So the robots and IoT and cloud computing and everything like that, everything here is interconnected in a way that makes sure that it can work together and use some of the same protocols. If you look at search on the internet for IoT and for Industry 4.0, obviously you get a lot of hits, but some of the first hits that I got when I was searching for IoT was the different standard protocols. And in the printing industry, we can always speculate about, okay, when we have IoT protocols that do something, and I will tell you a little bit on how it can be used, then you of course have to speculate about, is it kind of replacing the need for XJDF and JDF and JMF and things like that? Or is this something that is added to the specifications. If we look at, for example, Horizon, they at the Smart Factory in Kyoto last year presented their new ICE link, which is basically their software utilizing a combination of IoT and JDF. It is, I would say, it's something that is more side by side, where the IoT might be the protocol and the way you communicate to other devices. The JDF are still like the job definition format, where the specifications of the jobs are still delivered into the systems in this quite well-defined format. So why is it we want to have all these devices connected? I think it's a pretty good question to ask, because why do we need refrigerators and coffee brewers and washing machines to be connected in any way? And maybe that is maybe more on the fun side, but it also have some kind of interesting applications because, sorry, I was just putting in a Danish word in between, because if you look, for example, at some of the new refrigerators coming to market, just imagine that a few moments ago, I showed you that we have different technologies like NFC, which is like the near field communication. Imagine that you have the grocery that you buy in your local supermarket. Instead of standing in lines and get it scanned and pay for it, when you take it down, you have already taken it, it's already registered. Amazon have physical stores in the US where they're trying to have staff-free and new types of stores where you just take the things, goes out, and because you're known and because all the products are connected, it will give you direct payment of the products you take. And it's I've seen some TV programs where they were trying to fool it, and it was not possible to easily fool it anyway. But imagine that you take this groceries and you put it in your refrigerator when you come home, and then the refrigerator actually knows what you put in it, and it knows the expiration dates of your products, and you know exactly what you need to do. Maybe it's not like something that you must have, but I don't know what about you, but we are a busy family in my house, and I sometimes think it could be great to have something that makes it easier for me, so I could sit here at work and think about, okay, I would like to do this kind of food, and then instead of calling my wife and ask if she could check on the refrigerator, I can just say, okay, this is the recipe, let me check what I need, and then I just order whatever I need. So that is just like kind of understanding that Internet of Things is, for some of the applications, maybe not the most needed things, but on other applications, something that is really nice to have, right? And of course, when we talk about these things, if you look at what I'm talking about here, what IoT can do is basically enabling mass surveillance, which is like good and bad. We can talk about that if we like. Entertainment, smarter consoles, smarter interaction between users, autonomous vehicles like self-driving cars, self-driving trucks, self-driving whatever. Then we have the smart factories. I put in a nice composition of the smart factory from Kyoto and more. And then we have predictive purchases, and we have optimization. And this is just a few of the things that Internet of Things can enable you to do. But let's talk about, before we move to the next slide, just talk a little bit about what kind of predictive purchases, for example. Let's say that you have computers that are involved in your production of in your printing company, for example. Rather than you go and pick up what paper you want to buy, you can put in like decision processes in your AI software, where you basically say that, okay, we need that kind of paper, we need it in that time, and instead of having a person actually making the decision about what to purchase, the IoT, because it's not because it understands what you have been spending years to do. It's just because it has sensors, it has some kind of programming that enables it to understand the relation between the needs and the thing, and then it can order directly from your vendors via the internet, of course. So just examples on how this is enabling thing. Imagine when you have a self-driving car, it will change the market completely, because why own a car if you can predict when you need a car, and the car will be available the moment you are there. So new ways of thinking the industry and how we are doing things, and I think it's kind of thought provocative in a way. So, but let's go on to it. So let's talk a little bit about the advantages. When you have IoT, which essentially sensors have the sensors on your equipment, it essentially can predict and see how things are developing, because I mean, you can connect it to a database saying that every time you have these kind of flaws in your production, now it can predict when you have a plant maintenance, which again optimize the production. You can even think of that your vendors can produce better products, because if they know that you always spend more time on setting up this particular job rather than this particular job, then they can develop services that makes the equipment better for you. They can do service remotely, and it also brings in the opportunity of new financing models. And let's stick to that for a second, because I have, as some of you may know, been in quite deep discussions with some of the people from Heidelberg in relation to the Prenect and how they're using their IoT solutions to understand the use of consumption and how printing machines are used. And see, so one of the ways that you can see new financing models is that if you know exactly what is going on in the production, in your production, and you know exactly the utilization of your machine, and you know exactly how much time you spend on setup, how much time whatever you do in the printing shop can be monitored, then it's not a guesswork if you are trying to have models where you pay per use kind of things, because now it's based on something that you know rather than something that you believe. So that opens up for services that are totally different and totally new in how we know it from today. So I think that is quite interesting, of course. There's also disadvantages with it, because you have to think of, I said in my couple of previous slides ago about the mass surveillance. It's not because you have IoT, you have like camera surveillance. That's not what I'm talking about. But you have 24/7 monitoring of all the devices that are IoT enabled. That means that they know, and I say they in quotation, your vendors will know when you have the machine powered off. They will know when you work with it. They will know what kind of work you have on it. And all those kind of things is, of course, something that you have to take into consideration, because I think that some printing companies might consider this as critical production data. And these data, if they are shared, let's say that you're a very, very good binder or very, very good printer, and those advantages is not just used as a KPI for other printers to be inspired from, but actually sold as data how to optimize your own business. That is something that you simply have to. Sorry, I was just reading. Angelo is writing here, cameras reading expiry dates in your fridge. Yeah, that is, cameras can do that too. That's right. I've seen that with NFC as well. I just want to let you know. But you're probably more right than me. So, the competitive advantage, if that is shared with everybody, then if that is a critical element in your production, then it will level out some of your advantages from a competitive perspective. So let's take a look at who are the players. And of course, everybody is a player, but Horizon is already with the ICE presenting this. TechNow, also a binding company, going to give a presentation on Thursday. In focus, obviously, Heidelberg, as we just spoke about, Tilia Labs presented at Label Expo, an integration to, I think it was SwissQprint or Sund, Komori, Hunkler, HP, Ricoh, Canon, Xerox, everybody, of course. This is something that we can't think of will not happen, because it is happening right now. And therefore, everybody, of course, needs to understand at least the basics and also what is going on in the printing companies when you're using it. One of the things that I don't know about, and I have searched for it on the internet, but I couldn't find a really good answer on it yet, is because let's say that we have a lot of different printing devices, bindery devices, enhancement devices installed in our printing facility. What happens now with interconnectivity? Because let's say that Horizon talks to Horizon about uptime and plant maintenance and all the things that is important to the Horizon binder, for example. That makes perfect sense. But if it's a plant maintenance, it may not be so well planned that it also automatically works with what the printing machine thinks is an optimized time for plant maintenance. And I'm just thinking that some of the questions I would ask if I was investing in these new technologies is how to make sure that this interconnectivity is ensured, and how we make sure that the machines are taking into considerations that they are not alone in the universe, because that is the whatever way you look at it, that is a fact. Then the other thing is the rollout, because I think that most of us remember that when the first time we heard about JDF, I think that most of us were also in a position where we're thinking that, okay, this is really great. We get job tickets from the MIS systems delivered to the printing machines, to the digital printers, to the binding equipment, to basically everything that we needed. And then it was easy to do the jobs and things like that. And the reality is that, if you have a very old printer or a very old binding equipment and you don't have the JDF, the rollout of that technology is very dependent on how often you replace your equipment, right? I think, for example, that with the rollout of IoT, it will be much faster than it will JDF. First of all, because I think the competitive situation among printers have been way higher over the past years than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Another thing I also believe is that the competition will not be it will not be a lower competition in the future. So I think it will also be a competitive parameter to have machines that are more efficient, that have less downtime, and where the relationship you have with the vendor is maybe on a totally different level than it used to be. It's not just a matter of putting in a machine, hope for the best, and then and see what happens. No, this is now starting to become something where the vendors become way more involved in your business, in good and bad. That's my point as well. So rollout, I think, will be faster. I also know that some of the printing machines and some of the binders out there, they have legacy interfaces that can still be connected to computers and still be used as part of the IoT. So I think that a lot of your equipment is maybe already ready for IoT, and that is something that I think you should talk to your vendors about this, because I think it's important to understand also when you look at your investment plans for the future, how you can incorporate IoT not only in your production but also in your sales and all your other activities. And to be honest, I'm also pretty sure that IoT will also find its way into some of the other areas that are not production related. It's everything from your transportation people, companies, to your all your non-print related systems in your company, because it is something that will be heavily promoted by all vendors of all kinds of technologies, I believe. And then the price. Well, I think that IoT in itself is not expensive. I think that what we should learn from what we've seen so far is basically that some of the basic financial models for how we invest might change. Some people may think that I don't like the Heidelberg model because I have been writing articles about questioning them. I don't think I don't think their model is necessarily bad. I just think they need to be more honest about what they are actually offering, because I think that where we also, as we spoke about yesterday, when both Henrik and Kit and Kasper were talking about prices and profits, I think that the pricing models on how we see equipment financed in the future will change. And if we can use the data to get prices that are, let's say, they are more aligned with when the machines are used, doesn't mean that it will be cheaper. I think it will be more expensive. But I think from a cash flow perspective, I think from a profitability perspective, might be way better in the future if you can have something that is less equity cost and more an operational cost. And I think that IoT can be an initiator for that process as well. I have been writing about this on INKISH News. It is a subject that we will definitely dig into more, both on specific equipment, but also as trying to give a basic understanding about the advantages and disadvantages and what to look for. I think that all vendors, I mentioned just a few of them before, are working in this direction right now. And I think that you can't avoid having a perspective on this, whether you are a big printing company or small printing company. This is something that will impact your business in some way. And some companies and some of you guys may have a situation where you won't think of it because it's just there. And you will think it's nice that you just switch on your mobile phone and you can see your production details directly on your phone and all these kind of things. But think about what it means to you if you could read about your customers and when they need print, and you can see how you maybe can utilize IoT also as part of your offerings and your understanding of how customers behave in the future. I think that could be pretty interesting. So thank you very much. Again, it's a bit strange to be your own presenter and moderator, so I have asked my colleague Henrik to join me for a session here just to hopefully ask some questions and see if that can be used for anything. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Morten, for a nice presentation. One of the questions that we always want to be able to answer is looking into the future and talking about big data and looking into the future and predictive purchasing. How do you think that can be combined in the future?
You're an evil person. That's what I was saying. I don't know, to be honest. I think that IoT and all technology, I love new technology, and I am always digging into it because I want to know more about it. But I also have a very critical opinion about it because it's there, it doesn't mean that I always need it, right? And when it comes to like predictive pricing and when it comes to predictive of everything, in my opinion, it's maybe a little bit that we're looking for facts. For example, yesterday when Casper and Kit were talking about using artificial intelligence to predict prices, when I go in the bazaar in Jerusalem and have to bargain with the Arabs in that bazaar to talk, that is fun, right? It would be a shame if there was an artificial intelligence guy coming out of that, say, here, this is the lamp of the 1,000 promises, and now you pay $5 for it, right? It takes a little bit away that kind of that makes it fun to negotiate, and it also creates, in my opinion, maybe some distance to the fact that you have, how should I put it, to the fact that you sometimes have values to a product that are not based on price, based on your relationships, based on that you like each other, based on things that you trust each other, you trust the advice. If everything just becomes computerized in the decision processes, why not only have one car? Why not only have one piece of paper? Why not only have one printing machine? Because they do the same, right?
Yeah, I think I think that's one of the discussions about the algorithms behind IoT and other artificial intelligence is how are they actually constructed and what do they take into consideration as well. I was also thinking, what about the challenge for processes in a print shop? Because does IoT and connectivity require an update on the production floor?
The short answer is most likely yes. I think that it depends, of course, on how old your equipment is, but I think that I don't know about in the developed countries, but I would say that in all in the Americas and in Europe and in Japan, Australia, Singapore, and those regions, I'm pretty sure that they have the latest 2-3 generations of printing equipment, and all of those printing machines have already been enabled with SIP3 or SIP4 data. So a lot of these machines would probably be quite easy to connect with your IoT infrastructure. Of course, you will also have legacy products, because I don't think that an old Heidelberg cylinder will be very connected to IoT thing. And you can of course ask whether you can get full advantage of the IoT unless you connect all your devices. I think that IoT is great. I got a very, very good presentation a couple of weeks ago by Dai-san from Horizon in Japan, where he was disclosing, I don't think it was a secret, but he was disclosing 3 levels of how they developed their IceLink, which is based on IoT mindset. And I think the main thing for Horizon at that point was to have a connectivity with the customer, so they could monitor and have plant maintenance and do those kind of things were the first level of things. And that is, of course, a huge advantage for a printing company to know that, okay, in 2 weeks' time, we schedule 2 hours or 5 hours downtime for service and maintenance, so they don't come like a surprise. Of course, it's a great advantage for most that when you have if you have a machine and it can be fixed before it really breaks down, because you know that you have a certain repair cycle of a device, obviously better. My question is more like when you take the data and you kind of utilize that as KPIs, and you utilize that as part of, to be honest, that if you, I think you even said it yourself when we were talking about the Heidelberg business case, that you said that if you are Formula One racing car team, I don't think you really want all the secrets on how you change tires and what kind of parts you're exchanging in the pit to be shared with all the others, because that is one of the competitive advantages in this sense. And I'm just a little bit afraid sometimes that if we have all data accessible and we share all that data with everybody, I'm not saying that it should be machines and equipment that should be the competitive advantage, but I'm just saying that I know for a fact that right now it is.
Okay. And the last question I have is about this machine versus people, because it must be, you know, a challenge in a print shop as well to have the education cost and to have the idea how to use this kind of information as well. How do you think this will be reflected in the printing industry?
I think that's a good point, and I think that it will be. I think it will be even better in the future, because if IoT can help the printing company to understand where the bottlenecks are, also from a learning perspective, the vendors will obviously also be able to give education in these specific areas. They will also be able to develop new equipment that, you know, utilize some of the bottlenecks to make them even easier to use. I think that I know that a lot of people don't like talking about it, but I think a lot of vendors are thinking about how to make a lot of these environments in the printing shops operator-less, meaning that they can actually have robots handling things. They can have a very low number of operators. They can have maybe non-educated operators as well, because this becomes like a race to the bottom when it comes to price. And obviously, if you have a much better understanding of your operation, or vendors have better understanding of all the customers' operations, of course they will be able to develop solutions and software and services and all things like that that can enable printers to be, I wouldn't say smarter, because a lot of printers will probably just give that competitive advantage away as lower prices on products, which is not good for the industry.
And on the chat, Angela has a good point. That we talk about the smart or the efficiency in changing parts, spare parts when they are absolute, but there's also the temptation that has to be tamed as well, because it could be that a part doesn't necessarily have to be changed, even though it has been running for a number of rounds, right?
That's true too, and that is, and one of the things that I think you should know as well is that the more supplier knows about you and your behavior, the more intrigued they also will be to develop products that they know that you need. So maybe you will also be pushed a little bit towards buying products and services that I think they will not try to force anything that you don't want or need, of course, but I think they could take advantage, because I mean, I have a nice car. I'm pretty sure if I could get the same car a little bit more expensive but with nicer stereo, or because they know I listen to music all the time, I think it would be a good KPI for selling me a new car. So I'm just trying to say that, of course, these kind of things, I believe, also can be, I wouldn't say abused, but used in a way that maybe wasn't the intention from the beginning. So should we call it for today? What do you think of today, Henrik?
Well, I think that is an interesting way to conduct these webinars, and of course, as we talked about previously, we have a more informal style, like for instance, drinking Coke online. But I hope that our viewers got a very good impression of the different topics.
I must say that today I didn't like my own presentation so well, but that is because it's always kind of strange to be in front of those kind of things. But I actually like the environmental perspectives quite a lot, because I think it's becoming a truly important thing and a very important KPI from an industry perspective. And sometimes to hear from for example, from Intergraph, where you get like a very more in-depth understanding of the complex ways of getting legislation through, and how we as an industry can be involved by our memberships and our federations, and how we can, I think that was quite interesting. And I think that also Carsten, when he gave like this presentation, how to use a tool like Climate Calc to calculate your carbon footprint, is something that you can not only use to be the good guys lowering your emissions, but you can also sell that as a service. And I think that a lot of people, also in relation to what Mark Hinter said yesterday, I think it's very important that everybody is now focusing on how to increase your cash flow, your revenue, and your profits. And that this is maybe a way, because everybody wants to have a safe and good environment for the future, right?
One of the points that I took with me from the Climate Calc was also that yesterday we talked about how to calculate differentiation value of products, and Climate Calc is actually an example of how you can be very concrete about how to measure the difference between products. So
totally agree. And Henrik, best thing about ending today is that we know we have another Learn with us tomorrow. And just for people to know, tomorrow we have the first presentation at 11 tomorrow is with Toon van Rossum from InFocus, talking about workflow automation. Then we have one of my favorites, Pete Sakeman from Chili Pop, is talking about smart templates. Then we have Tim Cox from VPress talking about web to print. And then we have Inki Carlson from Spot Nordic talking about SMS colors. So a great program again tomorrow. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank the audience. I want to thank everybody for joining us at these Learn with us. As I said yesterday, it's still like a new way for us to produce content, and hopefully something that is valuable for you. So when this webinar ends, you can leave a comment and you can rate us if you like. But for now, thank you very much, and see you hopefully tomorrow.